People were queuing up waiting for bus number 950 heading towards Johor Bahru, Malaysia, one of the bus lines between Singapore and Malaysia that is using one of the busiest border crossings in the world. The city bus crossed the border between Singapore and Malaysia every day, every single day around the clock. The immense importance of bus in commuting people across the strait is due to restrictive car policies in Singapore, limited capacity of cross-border train, and impracticality of air travel, just 22 kilometers between Singapore and Johor Bahru. How crucial is the bus as a mode of transport between Singapore and Malaysia? Let's get in line and understand of the city bus lines that crossing the international border between Singapore and Malaysia. The land connection between Singapore and Malaysia is one of the busiest international border crossings in the world. In the middle, Strait of Johor or Strait of Tebrau form a natural barrier between Singapore and Malaysia. There are two land crossings crossing the strait: Johor Causeway between Johor Bahru and Woodlands, and second link between Glang Patah and Tuas. At Johor Causeway alone, according to Immigration and Checkpoints Authority or ICA Singapore and Department of Immigration Malaysia, the average daily number of crossings is 300,000 and the number will increase during the major holidays. In this video, the focus is on the city buses between Singapore and Johor Bahru, as there are a variety of type of buses crossing the border every day. There are express bus, excursion bus, worker bus, and or even school bus. We just focus on the city bus. The journey started at Woodlands MRT station, where I took the bus number 950 from Woodlands temporary bus interchange to JB Sentral in Johor Bahru. The time is 6:52 PM. The bus looked just the same as the other buses in the Lion City, but the passengers need to bring the passport to ride the bus until the end of the route. Bus route number 950 is one of the numerous city bus routes that crossing the hard border between Singapore and Malaysia every day, 7 days a week. On the Singaporean side is Woodlands checkpoint, a massive border checkpoint for all kinds of vehicles on the road and the rail. On the Malaysian side is Johor Bahru Custom Immigration and Quarantine or CIQ Complex. Officially known as Sultan Iskandar Building, the grandeur CIQ Complex was opened in 2008 to replace the older CIQ Complex located right at the end of the causeway. Before the introduction of the city buses and even before the existence of the causeway, Singapore and Johor was connected by irregular boats and ferries. Horse carriages from the city passed through Bukit Timah Road and Woodlands Road and dropped the passengers at Kranji or Woodlands before the boats took the passengers across the strait. There were also reports of bicycles and rickshaws travel in the entirety of Bukit Timah Road and Woodlands Road. After railway reached Woodlands in 1903 and Johor Bahru in 1909, the number of passengers crossed Strait of Tebrau increased. However, boats and ferries have limited capacity and the railway ferries were ran around the clock to serve the increasing numbers of passengers and cargoes. As a result, Johor Causeway was built between 1918 and completed in 1923 as a permanent link between Johor and Singapore. The causeway itself has its own interesting story, topic for another video. After the completion of Johor Causeway in 1923, the movement across the strait is exclusively either by road or rail. Ferry and boat services ceased to operate since that year. However, the train operates a few times per day as a single-track railway limits the number of trips. In addition, cost of operating a train is not cheap, which explains the limited number of trips, including the currently run Shuttle Tebrau by KTM. Since 2011, the only operating railway station in Singapore is in Woodlands Checkpoint, where the passengers need to transit by bus to the final destination in the city state. Thus, there are demand of frequent bus services. The first bus route between Singapore and Johor Bahru was opened in 1950 and was operated by Green Bus Company. The bus ran between Jalan Wak Afok in Johor Bahru, Malaysia and Old Queen Street Bus Terminal in Singapore, which was located near the junction between Queen Street and Rocher Road, about 200 meters from the current Queen Street Bus Terminal. Due to its proximity very near with the former Rocher Centre, the colourful apartment buildings, the area once was called as Little Johor, as it was the location where the Johorians disembarked from the bus or waiting for the return bus to Johor. After the revamped exercise of bus services in 1970, SBS took over the bus route with the new route number 170. Introduced in 1971, Route 170 is the longest existing bus line between Queen Street in Singapore and Larkin Bus Terminal in Malaysia, with several adjustments over the years. As the buses on Route 170 need to stop at the bus stops along Bukit Timah Road, Oden Arn Road and Woodlands Road, the journey could take up more than 1 hour between Queen Street before reaching the checkpoint. Thus, in the year 2000, bus route number 170X was introduced as a shorter alternative to 170 between Kranji MRT station and JB Sentral. There are non-stop buses that runs between Queen Street and Johor Bahru. Singapore Johor Express or SJE is an express city bus service serving Queen Street and Larkin Bus Terminal with no stops in between except for immigration and customs. I tried to find when SJE started to operate but could not find any reliable data. The earliest mention of SJE I can find publicly online is from 1956 when the bus was suggested to be part of the bus reorganisation plan. Interestingly, SJE was never included in the bus reorganisation in 1971 and never been unified into SPS as with the other former bus companies in the year 1973. To be honest, I never rode SJE since the route is just the same as Causeway Link route CW2. Perhaps the comment section can explain how was the experiences using SJE buses. In 2004, SMRT buses has introduced the route 950 between Woodlands Bus Interchange and Johor Bahru, the bus I tried to ride. And let's see how the queue is going, how far the queue moves. Not much, just moving a little. The queue is moving a little, but at the same time more and more people will join the queue. Finally, a chance to get into the bus at 7:19 PM after 24 minutes of waiting. Other than SBS, SMRT buses and SJE, another Singaporean bus company, TransStar, handles 3 cross-border bus lines, which are TS1 from JB Johor Bahru to Changi Airport, TS8 from Johor Bahru to Resort World Sentosa, and TS6 from Glam Patah to Buona Vista. And lastly, there is a little known cross-border bus route to JBCIQ, which is AC7, departing from Yishun Integrated Transport Hub just nearby Yishun MRT station. But the frequency is low since there are fewer passengers and delays might be possible. Well, this is Yishun, so what do you expect? Before 2003, all city bus routes between Singapore and Johor were dominated by Singaporean bus companies. The reason is that the city buses that run on the route crossing the border need to be licensed by both countries, Land Transport Authority or LTA in Singapore and former LPKP, which is today Land Public Transport Agency or APAT in Malaysia. Malaysian bus company Handal Indah, doing business as Causeway Link, opened the bus route starting with Larkin Bus Terminal to Kranji and Queen Street in 2004, and more bus routes are added later. Causeway Link buses are clearly seen from afar, the bright yellow buses. Unlike in Kuala Lumpur and Greater Klang Valley, Causeway Link operator somehow is not using touch and go. Instead, the operator used its own cashless system, which is Manjaling, of which the value stored in the card is neither in ringgit nor Singaporean dollar but in travel credits. Manjaling card is able to charge the bus fare on both sides of the streets by deducting travel credits in the card, the Manjaling card, the system that cannot be replicated just by using touch and go due to financial regulations. Causeway link buses are accepting Visa on board, the first Malaysian city bus operator that did so. Dedicated bus stops often separated from the well-signed local Singaporean buses. That's where Causeway link buses drop and take the passengers. Even if the Causeway link buses operate in the bus interchange, it often allocates the furthest platform away from other Singaporean bus lines. One of the examples is at Jurong Town Hall bus interchange. Meanwhile, Singaporean buses in Malaysia have their own issues as well. Singaporean buses stuck in traffic, especially on Malaysian side, primarily due to the absence of the bus lane. Some people do have preferred bus route or bus company over the other. For me, most of the route use Johor Causeway and stuck in traffic altogether regardless of the brand and number of the line number. Despite all the issues of travel time, bus stops, long queues and unpredictable delays, why do people take buses every day to cross the border and not just simply drive? The short answer, money. The reason why bus is heavily used is due to strict regulations of private vehicles on Singaporean side. Certificate of Entitlement or COE was introduced in 1990 to curb the ownership of private vehicles in a land-scarce country. COE is a certificate that gives the holder a right to buy a vehicle such as a car or motorcycle and own the vehicle for 10 years maximum. Before someone could buy a car, the person need to bid for COE that's sometimes more expensive than the purchase value of the car itself. On the Malaysian side, it is relatively easy and affordable to buy a car and a motorcycle, but it is not cheap to drive the vehicles into Singapore. Every motorized vehicle from Malaysia entering Singapore need to pay VEP or Vehicle Entry Permit, which costs 35 Singaporean dollars for a car per day. $35 just to bring a car into Singapore for a day. And the charge is not include other driving costs such as parking and electronic road pricing or ERP. What is ERP, you might ask? ERP is the dynamic road congestion chart that fluctuates according to traffic volume and the time in a day. Expensive in the morning, maybe free in the midnight. Thus, driving in Singapore is expensive both for Singaporeans and Malaysians. The total cost of driving into Singapore is $47.20, estimation or RM157.10 via Woodlands checkpoint for a day. For just one day. Compare that with the estimate of 9 Singaporean dollars or 30 ringgit return bus ticket between Singapore and JB. On Malaysian side, all motorized vehicles need to pay the toll in Sultan Iskandar Building or Tanjung Kupang Toll Plaza at Second Link, both ways. For the car, the toll is RM2.37 in Sultan Iskandar Building and RM6.14 at Tanjung Kupang Toll Plaza. In addition, Singaporean cars entering Malaysia need to pay about RM20 road charge since 2017. As an act of reciprocity, Malaysian vehicles need to pay reciprocal road charge in Singapore, which is RM6.40, equivalent of RM20. And you might ask, why just not ride a motorcycle? It should be cheaper. Motorcycle riders will be charged for Singaporean dollars for VEP and still need to pay more for ERP and parking. In addition to road congestions, especially the causeway, rain, unpredictable weather and higher risk of getting into road accident, motorcycle is not for everyone. But at least motorcycles pay nothing at the toll plazas. It might be better to ride a bicycle, the rider pays nothing at all. With such a long travel time, congestion and long queues, cross-border bus crossing the Strait of Tebrau is often not a pleasant experience during the peak hours. In a bid to speed up the immigration checks, both countries have introduced the usage of the QR code clearance in the passport. Instead of showing a passport, a traveller can open My ICA mobile app to clear the Singapore immigration and or My Border Pass app to clear the Malaysian immigration. For My ICA mobile, new foreign passport users need to go to the menu counters before being able to use the QR code on the app. For My Border Pass in Malaysia, a passport needs to be registered before the app can be used. As on March 2025, only Malaysian passport holders can use My Border Pass app, and perhaps foreign passport can use the app in the near future. Who knows? In the news, an immigration officer shows a thumbs up when a QR code is valid, but in the normal situation, the officer just gives you a nod. The most anticipated ongoing cross-border project is Rapid Transit System or RTS. RTS will be in operation between Bukit Chaga in Johor Bahru and Woodlands North in Singapore, reconnecting the Singaporean and Malaysian rail network after the closure of KTM rail line between Woodlands and Tanjung Pagar in 2011. The project is on track to be opened by 2027. It is expected that 10,000 people will use RTS per hour on the peak times on weekdays. With the projected fare of around 5 Singaporean dollars, it is assumed that buses will continue to be heavily used as bus fare is cheaper than the train, and some of the bus routes such as CW2 is direct to the city area, the central area, without any intermediate stops. For now, city bus is the most reliable mode of transport crisscrossing the border. I arrived at Johor Bahru at 8:35 PM after immigration and custom clearance. 1 hour and 40 minutes of total journey of 2 kilometers for Woodlands. For many Johorians, the lengthy cross-border trip will be repeated the next day, every weekday, every working day. Similarly, goes to Singaporeans that need to queue and wait for hours to cross to Malaysia on weekends and public holidays. Do you have unforgettable memories when crossing the border by bus? You can comment down below. If you want to take the bus between Singapore and Malaysia, there are several locations where the cross-border bus will pick up the passengers. In Singapore, Queen Street Bus Terminal is the most important cross-border bus terminal and it serves 3 cross-border bus line and cross-border taxi. Queen Street is also the nearest bus terminal with the city. On Johor Bahru side, the main cross-border bus terminals are JB Sentral, located next to CIQ building, and Larkin Bus Terminal, about 3 km northwest. There are also other pick-up and drop-off locations across Singapore and southern Johor. If possible, take the bus outside the rush hours on weekdays and afternoon on weekends. Don't forget to bring the passport. References in the form of articles is in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new about the city bus that cross the international border between Singapore and Malaysia. Thank you so much again for watching and see you in the next video.